All right, so we're going to call this meeting to order. Can I get a motion, please, to accept the agenda for the October 16th, 2018 organizational meeting of council as presented? Councillor Chouinard will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that the members of council be appointed to the boards and committees in accordance with the attached schedule, their appointments to be in effect until the 2019 organizational meeting of council?
I'll make it so.
Councillor Bevan will make that motion. And I'll speak to this, so you'll see the attachment as presented. What I've tried to do is ensure that each council member has an equal amount of committees. So every member of council has 5 committees that they are primarily responsible for and alternates on 2. You'll see we will be rejoining the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highways Association with all the issues regarding transportation issues in our community. I felt that was an appropriate measure to move forward with, and I hope that council will support these committee recommendations. Any questions or comments? Councillor Chouinard.
I'm just pleased that we're back on Trans-Canada. I believe it was important, so I agree with you, so I'm very happy with that, and the rest of it is great.
All right. Hearing no other questions, comments, or concerns, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council set the council and committee of the whole meeting schedule as follows? Regular meetings of council be held on the first and third Tuesdays of each month in council chambers, Edson Civic Building, commencing at 4 p.m. And committee of the whole meetings be held on the second and fourth Tuesdays of each month in council chambers, Edson Civic Building, commencing at 4 p.m. Councillor Chouinard will make that motion.
Okay, here. Okay, with the choices, I would like to move the motion with the alternate choice of not moving them, keeping them exactly the way they are. And reason for that, when we all ran for council, they were set there as the meeting, so it's not a surprise. And I don't want to get the message out to people, you know, we can change it. If you work for a living, this is not for you, because changing it to 4 o'clock for most people, your job runs till 5:30, so we're giving people adequate time to go home and change and get back. Plus, it's a nice mix. We have the meeting at 10 a.m., Committee of the Whole, fairness to people, and then at 7:30 at night, as you can see in the chamber tonight, people that wish to show up at our council meetings, it's adequate time for them to get home. So that's the one that I would like to see move forward, and that's my reason why.
So just to be clear, the motion is for 4 p.m., so you would have to vote against it or accept a friendly amendment. So any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Sorensen.
I would like to make an amendment to this motion to make it 5 p.m. for both, for all 4 of these, or for both of these bullets.
Okay, would you accept a friendly amendment to that?
To make it to that time?
Yeah, for 5 o'clock.
I would not, like you said, 5 o'clock. But it clearly said, my turn to talk? Clearly said, or we can take the alternate and leave it alone. So
The motion is for 4 p.m., so that is what we are speaking to right now. So we will have to vote against it, and then somebody will have to make a secondary motion that we can debate moving forward. Councillor Wilkinson.
I'd like to speak against this motion. I do not want them at 4 o'clock. I want them as they are now, to give the public a chance to come. And again, when people got elected here, we got elected knowing those were the times for our meeting. If we feel it's important to change them, let's do that as we're going out of office, and then the new people that run will know exactly what they're running. This is changing the rules of the ball game halfway through.
Your Worship, procedural, just point of order, council has recommended amendment. You should deal with that amendment first, which means that you would debate and then vote on the amendment.
Okay.
And then you could carry on with the conversation.
Okay, so you've made an amendment to 5 p.m., so that's the motion on the floor right now.
Right.
So I'm going to speak to 5 o'clock.
Banks, schools, government offices, medical clinics, law offices, all of the people that work in these buildings work till 4 to 4:30-ish. So it'd be very inconvenient for those people to attend sharply at 4 p.m. for a meeting. Also, I believe it would be much less likely for people in those offices to run for office if they knew they were going to have to take off time every Tuesday to attend these meetings.
Okay, Councillor Curry.
I am speaking in favor of the motion with the amendment. I also agree that it's our 10 o'clock meetings when we have the bulk of our conversations and our debates are not accessible for the average person that is working a typical day. I know myself, I wanted to attend them numerous times and was unable to ever attend them due to my job. And so now I do think for the public to be able to see our big conversations, that they should be in the evenings, and I think it also opens the opportunity. I think running in the election should be available to everyone, and this sets it at a time and sets that precedence that we will be doing that from here on in.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Bevan.
No, I also speak in favor with Councillor Curry and Councillor Sorensen on 5 o'clock. I'd like to go 10 o'clock for everything, but that's not going to fly. But I like 5 o'clock, and that's because, you know, you do get a chance to attend here. And, you know, basically the only time we get a large turnout in our council chambers in here if we are going with like the cannabis legislation here, rec complex, or whatever, stuff like that. Other than that, everybody, it sits there. All we have is our staff from the town office sitting here 99% of the time, and that is, so to say that the people come in here and say we don't get anybody at all. It's less there is something really going on in the town. So I am voting in favor with the amendment. I agree with myself.
Okay, Councillor Byron.
I would also vote in favor of the friendly amendment to 5 p.m. And in addition to what my fellow councillors have said, it works well with childcare as well. Doing it right after school, getting a sitter for 3:30 is quite challenging from what they've already told me. So that's my thoughts.
Right, and I'll speak to this. I will be supporting the 5 o'clock amendment. I do believe 4 p.m. is too early. I think 5 o'clock will allow most individuals in our community to attend right after work if they so wish. The 10 o'clock committee meetings are not conducive to allowing the public to attend. I've heard that from residents, not only in our community, but in our surrounding communities where they have their meetings during the day, that they can attend to provide their feedback or attend public hearings if they're during the day. 5 o'clock, I think, will make it easier for the public. I don't agree with the statement that we should just keep the times because that's what the last council did. This is this council's decision. The next council coming in can change it to how they see fit, and I think it's important that we try a time that is more favorable to a larger selection of the community. And daytime meetings work for some people that work, but for the most people they can't take time off. So I'm supportive of the 5 o'clock amendment. All right. So we'll call the question.
Ask for a recorded vote?
Can a recorded vote happen on? Okay. Yep. So you want a recorded vote?
Yes.
Sounds good. So I'll call the question on the amendment to 5 p.m. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. So now we'll vote on the regular meeting of council to be held on the first and third Tuesdays of each month in council chambers, Edson Civic Building, commencing at 5 p.m. Same thing for the committee of the whole meetings. I think we've had enough debate around this.
Can I ask for a recorded vote?
You can ask for a recorded vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council set the council and committee of the whole summer meeting schedule as follows. The regular meetings of council be held on July 9th, 2019 and August 13, 2019 in council chambers, Edson Civic Building, commencing at 4 p.m.
Mr. Mayor, you're
At 5 p.m.?
You're free to ask for, yeah.
5 p.m. And the committee of the whole meeting will be held on July 16th, 2019 and August 20th, 2019 in council chambers, Edson Civic Building, commencing at 5 p.m. Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Can I make a recorded vote on that too?
Yes, you can. Councillor Chouinard. I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council continue to rotate the position of deputy mayor every 4 months between each of the councillors and that such rotation occur in alphabetical order? Councillor Byer will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that Councillor Curry be appointed as Deputy Mayor commencing November 1st, 2018 and expiring the first day of March 2019. Councillor Sorensen will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Well, now, you know.
I was gonna say, we're gonna say no.
Thank you, Councillor Chouinard, for filling in that role the last number of months. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Now I can look after you.
Can I get a motion, please, the memorandum and attached information with regard to the legislative responsibilities of council be received for information? Councillor Byer will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept this memorandum regarding important dates in 2019 for information?
I think Jack's getting it.
Councillor Wilkinson will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. We have no sundry items. So we will actually, I think we'll just bypass the questions from the media and public until the end of the next council meeting.
That's at your discretion, Mayor. I don't know if they have
yeah, we'll
questions.
just
If they
hold
have
on.
questions specific to the organizational meeting, it may be
Sure.
best. I'm not anticipating.
Any
much,
questions
but-
regarding the organizational meeting? No questions? All right, thank you very much. Can I get a motion for adjournment? Councillor Chouinard makes that motion. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Well, now I can look after you.
All right, can I get a motion, please, that the agenda of the October 16th, 2018 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented?
Make it so.
Councillor Bevan makes that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that the minutes of the October 2nd, 2018 regular meeting of council be adopted as presented? Councillor Sorensen will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. We have a public hearing tonight, which has to do with our cannabis bylaw, number 2225, a land use bylaw amendment respecting cannabis-related uses. And I'll ask Mr. Verhage to come up and speak to some of the amendments to this bylaw that we discussed at our committee of the whole meeting last week. If you want to
Excuse
take
me,
it.
Mr. Mayor, I'll recuse myself.
Sure thing. Thank you, Councillor Sorensen. He's recusing himself due to a potential conflict of interest. Go ahead, Mr. Verhage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of council. Before you is the proposed cannabis framework for the land use bylaw. Just to make sure you have all of the background and all, as do people in the audience. As you know, the federal government through the Cannabis Act, effective tomorrow, will be legalizing cannabis within Canada. That they do set the restriction of a minimum age of 18 for the sale of cannabis, as well as the use of or sale of cannabis accessories. They restrict amounts to 30 grams of possession or provincial sales, which has to be approved through provincial sales, just like liquor. You can grow up to 4 plants within any given household, and consumables may be produced within a household, but only for that household's consumption and may not be sold. And those will not be addressed for another year. They also restrict products and marketing to youth and set some rather hefty criminal penalties, which started up to 5 years confinement, going up to 14 years, depending on whether people follow the requirements under the criminal law. The legislative framework continues down to the provincial government. The provincial government has accepted the minimum requirements, as noted, by the federal government. So we are allowing for 30 grams of possession at any given time. They are regulating retail sales through the Alberta Gaming Liquor Commission. They will allow it to go to 18 years. You can still have your 4 plants without hefty fines like you'll find in Manitoba. We also regulate where it can be grown as a facility, as a manufacturing operation, as well as retail. Now that's where the municipality comes in. Whenever the municipality is looking at its scope of influence within that framework, we are in control of land use, therefore we are in control of where these facilities, these retail facilities or manufacturing facilities or other counseling facilities can occur. We have looked at putting retail cannabis and accessories into our commercial districts, which is the C1, 2, and 3 districts. And I do have an amendment on that. Cannabis growing facilities will be allowed within our light industrial districts, which can be found on the periphery of the town. And we do have setbacks currently within the first reading bylaw, as you can see here, which relate to public open spaces such as parks, cemeteries, AHS-owned public health facilities or operate health facilities, daycare, schools, government offices such as the Service Canada building, the provincial building, and this office. And we also restricted the location adjacent to liquor stores and 100 meters from other cannabis uses once approved. So before anything's approved, those red zones you can see in that bottom diagram would be the restricted areas under the current first reading version of the bylaw. We've done public input. We've gotten a large response of 635 respondents to our survey, which you have reviewed. We've gotten several people questioning what regulations we have and are interested in the public hearing during the advertisement of this bylaw and this public hearing. And council did deliberate within committee several potential changes you wanted to see brought forward for your discussion at this meeting following the public hearing. So just to note, anyone who's read the first reading bylaw that was originally published and dealt with in September would know what they state. However, the option 2 within my report, which is the recommendation, includes several changes. Those changes include making sure that we include highway commercial district, which was always part of our messaging to the public. So that is an error we'd ask to have clarified and fixed. Removal of the setbacks to government offices. Setbacks to health facilities would only be from the approved hospital, which is the actual hospital, so not general AHS-owned facilities. Removing the restriction for it being located beside drinking establishments. Keep in mind that the cannabis regulations prevent it from being sold where there is drinking, but that doesn't mean that they can't be located next to each other unless we were to restrict it. So we're looking to remove that based on comments during the committee. And the discussion number 5 of removal of the separation distance between cannabis uses, which I believe certain members of the public have indicated they have a preference to discuss with you. So if you were to look at option 2, this right here keeps the 200-meter setbacks, but only restricts what the hospital itself, clearly available public parks where children could be located, school-owned properties next to our commercial areas, the daycare, and the cemetery. Just as a diagram on the very bottom, this is the regulatory minimum allowed by law, and we may not reduce that any further than this. So with that, I will leave this open to the public.
All right, thank you very much. And just a reminder to council that this is a public hearing for us to hear feedback from the public. There's not going to be any debate or any questions, and we will be able to debate it later on in this meeting. So I'll open the floor to members of the public. Please come up to the mic and state your name and your position on this matter, and it will be taken into consideration when we discuss it later on in the meeting.
Would it be all right if Councillor Sorensen came in just to hear?
He can sit in the gallery if he likes, but he's aware of that, so.
Okay, it's okay.
Yeah. All right, so we'll call the public hearing open. Is there any members of the public that want to comment on what's being proposed?
George Giroux. I guess looking at the option 2, that I think that's a fair option that balances the community needs with the need to stay consistent or close to the AGLC requirements. I think it also allows for by removing the restriction to being beside some drinking establishments or businesses that sell alcohol, also allows for experienced retailers that have a lot of probably decades of experience with AGLC to enter our market potentially and keep their businesses close together. Like I said, it allows for that consistency throughout to align ourselves more closely with the province, and then I think ultimately offering a more competitive business environment, potentially giving the town of Edson an opportunity to spur some more development in some of our retail areas that could surely need it. So I think the option 2 is something that I know myself and some of my partners there would certainly would support. It opens up enough of the business commercial land in Edson to be viable. The current bylaw, as it was first drafted in September, is extremely restrictive and doesn't really allow for the market to dictate locations, and ultimately I think when we do that, we're artificially suppressing, you know, some of the benefits that could be coming our way. So
All right.
that's it.
Thank you, George.
Thanks.
Anybody else would like to come forward and speak? Seeing nobody, do we have somebody?
Sure.
Come on up.
Thanks. My name is John Radisitz. I'm from Edmonton. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening. So I am the CEO of a national cannabis company called Candera, and we are looking at alternatives to invest in the communities around Alberta and certainly throughout the West. You know, we've looked at this market, and certainly the restrictions that were originally presented were very restrictive and really made it extremely difficult to find a viable location that we felt, you know, was a good retail location for a store. So so we support the concept of option 2. We think that it does create you know, the opportunity for the retailers, but also gives you know, the legislators enough room to control it and make sure that that this industry is rolled out in a safe and efficient manner. So we would support that.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to step forward?
Afternoon, council members, mayor.
Welcome back.
Phil Humes. Sure, everybody knows my name by now. So I appreciate this option 2. I think, again, as you've heard from my fellow public members, that this definitely opens up the floor for a little bit more business. It gives us an opportunity to develop all over town. The consideration with going a little bit further than the AGLC setbacks, there's lots of retail space that's available within the parameters that are set there. So if somebody had an option or wanted to have an amendment done at a later time, you could probably see that then, because I've experienced that already in other communities. But yeah, no, it seems fair. I'm not sure if anybody knows, but my application is directly across the road here, and just so happens that we've had an incident there over the last several days, and I think that with the extra security on the site, activity, things like that, we might be able to prevent things like that in the future. So I don't want that to deter anybody from, you know, making that decision and being able to support this option too.
All right, thank you very much, Phil.
Have a good day.
All right, any other questions or any comments? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public hearing, and we will debate this later on in our meeting. If you want to bring Councillor Sorensen back in. All right, can I get a motion, please, that council give second reading to bylaw number 2213 to close portions of road on Plan 5756 HW, Plan 5314Z, and Plan 7822748 as described. Councillor Chouinard makes that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? We discussed this at committee. It's pretty self-explanatory. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. And can I get a motion, please, that council give third reading to bylaw number 2213? Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council give second reading to community standards bylaw number 2218? Councillor Sorensen makes that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council give third reading to bylaw number 2213? Councillor Chouinard will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Councillor Curry, I'm having a hard time seeing your arm.
I know,
It's
I'm
not-
trying, I'm trying.
That big shadow
It's
I'm
my new
casting on
spot
you.
here.
Can I get a motion, please, that council give second reading to public conduct bylaw number 2219? Councillor Curry, thank you. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council give third reading to bylaw number 2219? Councillor Wilkinson will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Now the exciting part. Can I get a motion, please, that council give second reading to amended bylaw number 2225, amending land use bylaw number 2070 to include cannabis-related business uses and regulations.
Mayor, I will recuse myself.
Councillor Sorensen will recuse himself due to a potential conflict of interest, and Councillor Curry will make that motion. And Mr. Verhage already did his presentation, so I'll open the floor to any questions or comments from council. Anybody want to speak to this? Councillor Chenard and then Councillor Byer.
My only comment is, like we're hearing, I believe what we changed, it makes sense and more open for business. I mean, we have empty stores, and if it's legal, then, I mean, if we can benefit by renting out empty spaces, I think it benefits everybody, so I like the idea of the changes.
All right. Councillor Byer.
Through the chair, I'm in favor of the option 2, and through the public hearing that we're a bit more open to business, and I'm glad to see that their members of the public appreciate that as well, so I would be voting in favor of this.
All right. Councillor Bevan and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Yeah, I'm also in favor of the, through the chair, number 2. I know that that started, we had a lot of restrictions on it, but I'm glad we went that way so that we could work our way through being too restrictive down to what we wanted to be here, and then have our input from our public to come in, and we had 623 responses, which was great. So I think, you know, I'd rather go more restrictive and work it way down instead of going less restrictive and try to go back up, which will be a little bit of a tougher sell to everybody in that. So I'm glad we done it this way.
All right. Councillor Wilkinson.
I'm also in favor of option 2, and I would really like to thank the public for giving some input on this. I think we really need to work together, the public and the councillors, so that we're well informed too. And I hope it does work, that we're business friendly, because we are as a town, so thank you.
Councillor Curry.
I'm also in favor of option 2. I think, same as Councillor Bevan said, I think we did a good job of bringing it down and listening to the public, and still respecting what came out in the survey that was done. I did just have one question, through the chair.
Yep.
Is it typical that cemeteries were included? That was just a question I was curious of.
Go ahead, Mr. Verhage.
Interestingly enough, when it comes to almost every single one of these items, with the exception of daycare, public park, school property, hospital, public park, and cemetery, those are actually public uses defined under our bylaw.
Okay.
So it's easier for me to simply state public uses are restricted and keep cemeteries in than to start listing everything else.
Perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Curry. And I'll speak to this. I spoke to it at committee. I'm very glad that we've made these changes. My main concern after we looked at first reading was considering all the empty storefronts we have on our main street, as well as along our highway corridor, and not allowing these businesses to operate in our community, I think would be silly, and I'm glad that we kind of re-looked at that. And I think, as Councillor Chenard said, this is going to be a legal substance in about 4 hours. And I think some people might be staying up a little bit tonight to look forward to that. And as such, we should try to, as a community, capitalize on that. It's going to create employment, going to create opportunities, security, as was mentioned in the public hearing, as well as investment in some of those storefronts to make them really look nice. And anybody that's familiar with this issue or knows about this issue knows that in order to make these things happen, you have to invest a lot of money and make sure that they are secure. And so no fly-by-night people are going to be coming out and trying this. This is reputable businesses that are going to be trying to set up shop here in our community. And I think we should be open to business. So in full support of this, and that concludes my statement. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. And can I get a motion, please, that council give third reading to bylaw number 2219? Councillor Byer will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. Tomorrow's a big day. Can I get a motion, please, that council give first reading to bylaw number, sorry, I just lost my spot here. 2227 to close a portion of road right-of-way legally described as Plan 4200 MC. Can you get Councillor Sorensen? Sorry, we'll just hold off a second. As I was saying, to close a portion of road right-of-way was legally described as Plan 4200 MC, Block 151, Olive Lane within Block 151, and put on hold the public hearing and further readings until such time as approval is provided by the Minister of Transportation. Councillor Byer will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. No, I'm good. Can I get a motion, please? The council give first reading to bylaw number 2228, which amends the council code of conduct bylaw number 2212. Councillor Sorensen will make that motion. We discussed this at committee. Is there any further questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor
I wasn't
Wilkinson.
at committee, and I think if any charge is going to be brought against a fellow councillor, it should come to the mayor.
Okay.
Because it is a council decision.
And Councillor Chenard.
I also agree. I believe it's the mayor's job as chair of council, and then council's job would be if the mayor's out of line. So following where I'm, talking to other towns, it seems to be a standard. So I also feel the same way. If there is a councillor that is accused of some code of conduct, I believe it should be the mayor that would be reporting to him, the mayor handle it.
Okay, Councillor Byer.
Through the chair, I appreciate the current recommendation here with the informal complaint process for 1412, having the mayor assist in the informal ones, and then in the formal complaint 1432 that it's submitted to the CAO. That way, if the mayor was implicated in it, or if there was some other reasons why they wouldn't want to do that, then it kind of takes that away from the mayor being completely directly involved at that point in time.
All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Wilkinson?
Sorry. Unfortunately, I wasn't here for the
Please
town
address through the
meeting.
chair.
Sorry,
Thank
through
you.
the chair.
Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't here for that. But again, our CIO is our employee, and in most organizations I've ever been in, you're not evaluated by your employee, possibly by your superior, but we are the council. So I don't think it's appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. Councillor Curry.
I support this with the changes. Just seconding what Councillor Byer said, I really like the informal process, and that has been added, and I think that would limit us even going to the formal complaint. And I don't think the CAO is a evaluator in this. I think he's just a facilitator of that investigation. That investigation still comes to this council table, and that is still our responsibility. So I think it just takes the mayor out of that position of having to do that investigation piece, which I would say opposite could be the role of our employee. So I'm comfortable with this, and I like it, especially the new informal parts that have been added.
All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns? I'll just speak to this. So I want to be very clear that if the complaint goes to the CAO can't do anything without being in consultation with the mayor. It's just for the CAO to get that complaint, and then the process moves forward, and the mayor is always involved in that process. I prefer the CAO getting the complaint. That way I don't miss it in an email, or I don't get accused of not addressing an issue, because when it's in the CAO's hands, it'll surely get dealt with. Any decisions that are made as a part of the code of conduct are at the hands of this council and nobody else but the hands of this council. So I'm comfortable with the CAO taking the complaint. I certainly understand the optics of the complaint going to the CAO, but really nothing happens without it being consulted with either myself or the deputy mayor if I am the one, or if the mayor is the one being implicated in that complaint. So I am in support of this bylaw as it stands. So any other further questions or comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Sorry to double check there.
First reading.
That's first reading. We have second and third that will be coming forward at a future date. Can I get a motion, please, that council adopt proposed policy LM-4, council attendance at Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference and Alberta Municipalities Association Conference as presented? Councillor Chenard will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Once again, we talked about this at committee, and this is all contingent on budget being available for members of council to attend. As we have seen, it's rarely likely that all council attends these things as it stands due to other commitments and things that are going on in people's schedules. So, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried.
Your worship, if it pleases the group here, administration neglected to ask for a motion to rescind LM3, which was the previous policy.
Okay.
If the council is comfortable with that, we would certainly appreciate a motion of that nature.
Okay, can I get a motion, please, to rescind policy LM3? Councillor Byron will make that motion. Call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Can I get a motion, please, that council adopt the council remuneration policy LC-1 as presented? Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Just for sake of the public that's here tonight, maybe CEO Derricotte, can you just run us through why we're making this amendment?
Yes, thank you. This is in relation to a long-standing federal tax code piece that gave elected officials a 1/3 tax break on money they earned in those roles. That was recently rescinded, and so this change in remuneration is just to offset that change in federal tax policy.
So the take-home pay for individual members of council will remain the same. All right. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council approve the payment of invoice number 467859 in the amount of $235.78, inclusive of GST, from Brownlee LLP for legal services rendered with respect to a confidential HR matter? Councillor Wilkinson makes that motion. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council accept for information the letter dated September 29th, 2018 from the Edson District Chamber of Commerce regarding the 2018 Santa Claus Parade? Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Questions, comments, or concerns? Go ahead, Councillor Bevan.
On the Santa Claus Parade this year, it will be run by Kathy Arndt, and that, because Allison is stepping down on that. And they're well on their way to having their meetings right now, the same route as we passed last year. Ending at the Boys and Girls Club, so yeah, be really great.
All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. We have no sundry items. We'll move on to council committee reports. And, wow, this is going to be different with everybody moved around the table. We'll start with Councillor Byer.
So I just had one on October 3rd, Library Fall Networking Meeting. We met with the Yellowhead County Library Board representatives, as well as Kevin Dodds, our director for YRL, and it was really great to get some discussion around the table on what's happening in the different areas. And that was it.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Byer. Councillor Sorensen.
I just have the one on Thursday with the Edson District Recycling Society. It's no surprise they're working through much tighter budgets now and reduced revenues due to the changes in recycling policy from China. And they have requested additional funds to get through the 2018 year. That's my report. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Wilkinson.
September 19th, I was back there because I wasn't here, it was just a site tour at Parkland Lodge. October 5th, I did a conference call for FCSS provincially for the award selection committee. I went to multiplex steering committee meeting today at 2, and that's my report.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Chenard.
My list got smaller because of the new rules. On October 15th, which was last night, I attended the West Fraser PAC meeting, and some of the highlights were, of course, is the hot topic of the pine beetle. They're continuing to battle them. They're concentrating more on pine trees, thinking if that may be the solution for that. So far, in the Edson area, they always use last year's stats, and the pine beetle has not really came a whole bunch in Edson, changing because some of the pine beetles coming from the north, for whatever reason, have changed direction, so so they are continuing to control them. The government is looking at it, which we hope doesn't mean they're going to stop battling the pine beetle, because they've been on the right path, and what they've proven from, let's say, BC. Jasper is a good example, what no one ever wants to happen in Alberta. So they learned from BC. So they'll be meeting with them on Thursday to hopefully the funding goes. The other thing updated is Jasper. Some of the logging companies are at the meetings. They're going to go into Jasper and do more of a fire smart. The other question was brought up. The lumber market is still strong, but it has dropped some. So a lot of the supply and demand. So in our area, it's good, but they were reporting on some of the mills in BC that are struggling. So we have to be optimistic that it'll carry on. So, and then we will have, they have maps, which I'm not going to show you, but it's sort of the idea when they're doing the pine beetle battle, where they're concentrating on pine trees, but on the same token, they can't just stick to one area. They need to blanket out so they can take far and close trees, because if they get all the close trees, then in years to come, the cost will go up. So that was most of the meeting, was the pine beetle. So that's it for my report.
All right, Councillor Curry.
I did not have a committee meeting.
All right,
since last
thank
time.
you. Councillor Bevan.
Okay, issue's pretty light too. 10th I had a chamber meeting, and I guess the biggest thing that came out of the chamber meeting, Grand Yellow had approved funding for a resource officer for the school. And that, they give a full report on it, and that was really nice to see that they're on board with us now. So we're splitting it 2 ways, hopefully 3 ways in that. And then the first thing for the chamber is November 15th, Light Up Christmas promotion begins for the chamber and that. And also a multiplex meeting today with the county.
All
That's
right,
it.
thank you. On October 12th, I had the Northern Alberta Mayors and Reeves Caucus in Sherwood Park, which is chaired by Mayor Don Iveson. It was a very good meeting because we had the Federal Minister of Infrastructure there, and very personable individual and easy to talk to, and it was great to see him there. A number of provincial cabinet ministers were invited because we did have the federal infrastructure minister there, and they declined our invite, which was very frustrating for the 30 to 60 mayors in the room. So the federal minister did a presentation on the municipal infrastructure plan and the funding streams available. Of course, we've applied to the federal government for funding for our multiplex project. So he talked about the importance of rural communities. He has given direction that funds need to be approved and released sooner, so we don't miss construction season. Too often we get announcements halfway through summer and we lose a construction season. So that's something that they're working on. Of course, the federal plan is a matching grant program between the provinces and municipalities. A number of mayors raised a question with the federal minister asking for there to be an agreement between the federal government directly with municipalities, because the provincial government is not approving projects, they're not funding projects, and they are unable to get meetings with provincial cabinet ministers to discuss these projects. There's a high level of frustration with the mayors. The minister said he could not do that due to constitutional issues. They have to give the funds directly to the provinces for the provinces to disperse to municipalities. And it's really important that all 3 partners are at the table, and I would have to agree with that. So certainly the federal minister, who was in Alberta for a couple days, heard that on his road tour as well. So I'm sure there'll be some discussions between the federal and provincial government about that, but we're fingers crossed that our project will get approved, or at least partially approved. And then, of course, the mayors had a presentation from a consultant talking about the upcoming provincial election and the importance of raising municipal issues with all parties. Of course, we had a lot of issues that we're dealing with. So it was a really, really good meeting. And then earlier today, attended the multiplex steering committee meeting with Councillor Bevan and Wilkinson, and some information will be coming forward on Tuesday regarding that meeting. And that will be released to the public as well. So that is my report. And we are going to move on. Can I get a motion, please, to accept the budget summary as presented?
I'll make that motion.
Councillor Shernar will make that motion. Can I ask CEO Darracott maybe just to give us a brief overview of what we're seeing in terms of our budget so far this year?
We actually have
Sarah is here.
Sarah's here. Lost in the crowd, which is not usually a problem at our meetings, but I would defer to her.
Thank you, CEO Darracott. So we'll just give Ms. Bittner a moment to get.
Hit something on my screen. It disappeared.
Feel free to go ahead anytime you're ready there,
Oh,
Sarah.
sorry. Okay, I'm ready now. Just presenting the budget to actuals as at the end of September, so 75% of the year passed already. So generally I go through and look at anything that's around 15% either way, and included in the notes that are before you now. So if there's any other questions you may have on something that I haven't addressed within the memo, more than welcome to try and answer them for you.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Any questions, comments, or concerns from council? Councillor Barr, go ahead.
Through the chair to Ms. Bittner. I just have one question. So on the expenses that are below or around 50% or under, are we still providing the same level of expected services with that, even though the expenses is lower?
I think that's one of the things that we'll be looking at. I think there was one I noticed that I mentioned in here that there wasn't any, I didn't see any reason why it was low, so that we would be monitoring it and making sure that we actually are doing the levels of service that we have budgeted for.
Go ahead, Steve.
If I may, I would just add to that. We certainly haven't experienced any unexpected service disruptions or anything of that nature. What we will do is, as Sarah mentioned, go back and look and just see if there was any kind of project-based pieces that haven't been completed, either contractor availability or other issues. But in terms of general service provision, we're comfortable that we're providing the regular or normal amount of service.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? I do have a question through to administration, and I don't know if you can answer this or not. This has to do more on the capital side of things, but what capital projects have we not completed this year? I don't believe we completed the Kinsman resurfacing project. Is there any other projects that will be carried over or considered to be carried over for next year that you're aware of?
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps it would probably, certainly I think administration would be happy to bring forward maybe a detailed report on capital projects for consideration of council. It is my understanding that it is Sarah's intent to include that. You'll see a policy coming forward that outlines the financial reporting, and it will include parameters for reporting capital projects. I can speak to the Kinsman project. It has been tendered, it has been selected, and I believe it is going forward this fall, weather permitting, that at least some of the installations will be placed in there in terms of the sunshades and those pieces. But we'll certainly continue to monitor that project.
Okay, thank you. I have noticed that they are working on the sign of the trail signage as well.
Yes.
So, just with the sunshades, I wanted to just hold off on that until springtime, but that's just a personal point. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please? The account listing be accepted for information.
Make that motion.
Councillor Shernar will make that motion. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carried. Questions from media and public regarding items from this council meeting. Go ahead, Mr. Moore.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. If someone is, say, walking down Main Street and they're smoking away, thinking about exotic land somewhere, what restrictions would they have?
So council at the last meeting passed a consumption bylaw, which makes it illegal to smoke cannabis in any public spaces within the town of Edson. Our intention is education, obviously, but there is a fine structure in which any peace officer can issue a ticket. It's $250 for a first offense, $500 for a second, and $750 for a third. So that is under a separate bylaw under the consumption bylaw that was passed. Obviously, this is new legislation, and most municipalities are moving in that direction of being more restrictive to start off with. And then as the public gets more comfortable, there might be the opportunity to revisit it.
So this isn't as restrictive as, say, St. Albert, or is it?
I'm not familiar with the St. Albert
I think
model.
St. Albert outlawed, correct me if I'm wrong, consumption in any public place.
Yeah, we've allotted in all
Good.
public places, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So you followed.
Yeah, I guess so. So most municipalities have done that, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about items from this meeting? None? All right, well, Mr. Verhage.
I just make maybe one point of information for some of the people in the audience.
Sure.
The changes that you've made, 0.5 within the option 2, means that anyone who is going to line up at 7:30 tomorrow morning to rush in here first thing with their permit application doesn't have to, because we aren't restricting them from each other. So there's no first
come, first serve.
most likely to be approved situation anymore. So.
Okay.
And so I think what Mr. Verhage is saying is he's sleeping in tomorrow.
All right, thank you very much. We will make a motion now to go in camera. Councillor Barr will make that motion. All those in favor? Motion carried.
Got one extra job.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, can I get a motion, please, to adjourn the meeting?
Adjourn.
Councillor Sharad will make that motion. All those in favor, non-debatable, carried. Thanks for listening.
We forgot to ask